I would say the best thing about a DNA test, and I wish I had had this 25, 30 years ago when I started training, you're going to know about yourself and you're going to have these little bits of snippets and information for the rest of your life. And certain things might come in and come out. I've spoken about heart disease and other diabetes. Just because you have gene variants that predispose you to having X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean you're going to go down that pathway. It doesn't. If you've got a family history of heart disease or whatever it may be, your granddad had a heart attack, your dad had a heart attack, and you've got genes around that area. Well, if you don't live your life how your relatives have, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you have a better diet, you're not going to, I don't know, flick those genes on. Got to remember your DNA. Again, it's another analogy. Your DNA loads the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Guys, welcome back to the Strong Dad Show. We've got a special guest today, James from Muhdo Hub. And for those of you which have been keeping an eye on my social media lately, I've been pushing out a lot around the importance of DNA and epigenetic testing, especially following the results that the guys provided to me from Muhdo Hub. So we'll dive into it. We'll talk about the importance of understanding your DNA, understanding your genetics for optimizing your health, your performance, your longevity as a man. So James, welcome to the Strong Dad Show.
Thank you very much, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, it's good to have you here, buddy. So as a bit of an introduction then, buddy, do you just want to start with who are you, your experiences, and what you guys are doing at Muhdo Hub?
Yeah, of course. So I came from the world of rugby, played professional rugby, had to retire at 17, 18, got quite a bad hematoma, had to retire. And I thought, bloody hell, I'm not good at anything else. What am I going to do? So I went into the world of nutrition dietetics. Been doing that for the best part of 20 years, helping various individuals, the average person, to different sports teams, sports stars, helped Sean Fitzpatrick, Mercedes Formula One years and years and years ago, many moons ago. And then I moved into the world of DNA testing, basically, after two of my younger cousins passed away from cystic fibrosis. And I thought, so I'm helping all these people improve their performance, improve their day-to-day life through their diet. And I felt a little bit redundant in relation to helping my own family members. I couldn't help them at all. So that's quite a sobering thought. So I started reading about DNA, genetics, just more of a hobby and a pastime more than anything else. And and I thought, do you know what? This would probably get somewhere, aligning with what I was doing in the nutritional space anyway. And I've been a PT since 1999. So from a training point of view and dietary point of view, obviously understanding your genetics is fundamentally quite important. So I thought, oh, well, we're going to get a qualification. There was nowhere in Europe, so I had to distance learn over in Australia, flew out 2 days worth of exams, flew back, and then my nan had passed away, and I could have she said, it left me a little bit of money, and I could have either wasted it on a fancy car or putting a deposit down on the house. And so I thought, no, I'm going to try and start a company if I can. So I moved away from my hometown, away from all friends and family. And my sister at the time was living in Hastings, right on the English coast. So I had enough money to basically rent a bed sit, try and get the company going, enough money for a website, bought myself an old Mac, and basically sat in this loft room just typing and researching things for the best part of a year. Set my first company up called DNA Activate, which I set up in 2015. And then I merged into what is now Muhdo in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
So it's been an interesting pathway. Muhdo, I'll segue into Muhdo now. So what we do, I think most people have probably heard about DNA testing. They've probably heard of 23andMe and a few other companies, or Ancestry, understanding where in the world you're from.
Yep.
We come at it from a slightly different viewpoint in relation to your health and well-being. So we all understand that our DNA, we've all got the same DNA. We all have the same genes for the most part. But if we've got the same DNA, we've got the same genes, why do we all look and act and feel completely different? And that's down to your genetic predisposition. So a lot of them, we can see the physical, but we can't see the ones in relation to how well you might process the vitamins and minerals in your food, your inflammatory markers, how well you sleep, how well you cope with stress. These are all largely hardwired into your DNA. And what you've got is what you've got. You can't change your genes. They're the same from when you're born to the day that you die. But what you can change is your ability to improve the expression. So you can put things in place. For instance, if you know that your genetically predisposed to being a little bit stressed or genetically predisposed to not sleeping very well, there's certain things you can put in place to hopefully improve that outcome for you. Instead of going through life like this, not knowing, you'd rather go through life knowing the genetic cards you've been dealt and then how to sideswipe and sidestep certain areas and try and mitigate for their effect. So that's one half, that's your DNA, doesn't change. Now, what epigenetics basically does is, I think most people, I'll get a model. I've spent, you'll appreciate this. It took me all bloody weekend a couple of weeks ago to do this. See your
Okay.
DNA double helix, okay?
Yes.
I tried to put that together, and fiddly bits and big thumbs don't go well together. But that'll give you a rough idea of what the DNA
That looks
double
bad.
helix. So
That looks
that took
awesome.
me forever to do. Why I'm using this basically shows you there's a process that we look at, and we'll come into this in a little bit more detail, called DNA methylation. And what DNA methylation basically is there's lots of billions and billions of tiny little chemical markers called methyl groups. And what they do is they sit above your DNA, and we analyze the part where it attaches to the C and the G, cytosine guanine part of the DNA. Okay, so they're called CPG sites. So it's C, cytosine, P, phosphate link, G, guanine. So we analyze that specific reference point. What these methyl groups basically do, they attach to the DNA. They don't change the DNA, but they change the way that your genes express and function. And we
Okay.
influence that with our day-to-day lifestyle. How well we're sleeping, stress, if we're eating good and bad food, smoking, drinking, the usual things really. We gamify genetics with epigenetics, and we can see how your day-to-day life is impacting you in various areas. And the areas that we look at are, firstly, the underlying, your biological age. Are you aging biologically, internally, at the same rate as how many birthdays you've had? So
Your
we can
chronological
align your
age.
chronological age with your biological age and see where we are. And obviously, if you've got your biological age is 10, 15 years, that's probably not a good thing. So we
Yeah.
can start putting things in place to try and bring that down. So we use it basically as an overall barometer for your health. And then we look at other areas, your eye age, hearing age, cognition, your memory age. We look at inflammatory markers as well. So there's a whole variety of areas that we look at that you can then start tweaking your day-to-day routine to try and improve that specific outcome.
Makes perfect sense. Now it makes perfect sense. So
Okay.
to a lot of people, it could be a lot more complicated, or they could think is a lot more complicated than what you've just explained there. So thank you for that. And that's why in the reports you have like the TT variant or the CC variant, and excuse me. So okay, that makes sense. So that's that bit of an introduction. But what are you guys doing then at Muhdo? So that's the sciencey bit. I guess what is your purpose? What is your mission? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, from my point of view and the rest of the team, we're trying to simplify science as best we can, because genetics is obviously, or can be, extremely confusing for everyone to understand. So we've tried to simplify the science, and a branch of science specifically, and I'll go into a little bit more detail now. So the area that I specialize in is called nutritional genomics. And you've got two sides of this. You've got nutrigenetics, which looks like your underlying DNA and how your genes affect your ability to, let's say, I don't know, metabolize vitamin B12 or vitamin D.
Okay, yes.
And the other side of the coin is called nutrigenomics. That's how the specific, I don't know, stimulus that your day-to-day life, and more specifically the nutrients in your diet, are affecting your genes, like we just mentioned, and the way they express and function. So that's the two sides of the coin, really.
Yep.
What we're trying to do is take this extremely complex area of science and simplify it for everyone to understand and look through and get all their data via their handset.
And
Another unique point that we've just done, or should I say just launched this year, is that traditionally years ago, when the company was a lot smaller, it would be far easier for me, like we went through your results the other week. I would talk to someone for half an hour, whatever, just going through their results for them. But obviously that's not feasible. I can't speak to everyone now because we've got thousands of customers. So we've got an AI health coach that basically number crunches and goes through all of your data. You ask Macy a question and she'll basically give you an answer aligned to your DNA results, your epigenetic results, and your data and your lifestyle data, and simplify it. Because obviously I can't answer questions all the time. Whereas if you need to answer a question, she's there.
that's definitely where you've done an incredible job is the usability and how easy the app makes it. How it's all just broken down into different tiles. Okay, I want to find out about my hair health. You click on that.
Yeah.
Like I have an extreme predisposition to wrinkles, which you can tell I'm like a Sharpei. I didn't need the app to tell me that. I know that, but it is so easy to understand. Not just how you break it down into the tiles, it's how then when you go within each tile, and again, for guys listening to this podcast, I'll link to a bit of a video walkthrough of me going through my results in the app. But when you then go into each tile and each result, it's almost like swiping across like a carousel. This is the result. Okay, what does it mean for me? What do I need to do about it? The science behind it. It is so easy to understand. It takes such, like you said, a complex, and you said this is part of your mission really, is taking something which is so complex and difficult, making it so accessible and easy. And you're definitely doing a good job of that. So if we're then to consider the listeners of this podcast, men, fathers who are trying to either regain or maintain for themselves what it means to be a man, to be strong, to be capable, to be in control of their body, their health, and to live for a longer time. Why should this matter to them? Because they can go on ChatGPT and get a training plan. There's loads of online coaches which will sell them a cut-in plan for 120 quid. Why is this different? Why is this so important?
Because you can't chat GPT, or you can't AI yourself, can you? You can go online and they'll give you rough generic tips. And look, don't get me wrong, some generic advice is extremely useful. Get an early night, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke. There's all things that we can apply, generic advice, but this has moved to genetic advice. You're not going to find any better information about yourself than your DNA and genetics. Yes, there's other periphery testing we can do and align with it. So blood testing is very, very good. Blood testing maybe once every 3 months, once every 6 months, just to align certain things in relation to nutritional deficiencies. But people need to remember there's a difference between a blood deficiency and a genetic inefficiency. They're two different things. So if for instance, I went to the doctor later on this afternoon, because we're coming into winter now, and I'd like to know what my vitamin D levels are. And they come back and I've got, let's say, healthy levels. I've got 50 nanograms per deciliter or slightly higher. So I'm optimal with my vitamin D. Unfortunately, vitamin D doesn't work from just being present in the blood. It needs to attach to the receptor. So the VDR, vitamin D receptor, that's located in different points around the body. So you could have, Adam, you could have brilliant vitamin D levels, but you could have, for one for expression, shitty genes that filter, stop you absorbing lots of vitamin D or enough vitamin D. So you could find that you're still genetically deficient. And sometimes simply by having more of a specific nutrient, whether it be vitamin D, magnesium, potassium, whatever it may be, doesn't actually work. You need to take specific things or do specific things to improve the receptor. And specifically with vitamin D, there's a various things that you need to take. If you're taking a vitamin D supplement, just taking a vitamin D supplement might not work. You need all the necessary cofactors, the magnesium for the conversion in the liver and the kidneys, boron to increase the half-life. You need it to be in a fat source because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. So there's lots of things that you need to have to optimize or offset your poor gene variants in that specific area. So that's what we try to do in relation to optimizing that area. And in relation to the guys listening, when you get to, I mean, I was 47 2 months ago. And when you get into your 40s, there's how you look probably isn't quite as important as how you feel and being healthy. And obviously, if you improve your health and you feel healthy, the knock-on effect of that is that you should probably look better as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously working with a lot of athletes and being an athlete myself years and years and years ago, I think there's still a lot of confusion around being fit and being healthy, because the two don't necessarily meet. You've got professional rugby players extremely fit. Would I say they're healthy? Not at all. None of them are healthy. They're all held together with tape, got bangs, knocks, strains. There's never a point in the season where they're not rolling out of bed in pain, probably. So we need to make the distinction between being healthy and being fit. And yes, you can have both to a certain degree, but I think when you get much past 40, I think you're probably looking at areas around staying disease free, because these things start creeping into our minds once we get 40 and above: heart disease, cancer, and other things. And I'm not saying that our test will stop them, but if we can make a healthier version of you, then it would make sense that downstream everything else seems to improve as well, hopefully.
And I love that so much. It so aligns to everything that we do with Strong Dads, because like even when, so like Strong Dads, it is his own community interest company now, but even separately when I'm speaking with new clients for my coaching, first things I always say is, if you want to get shredded, go somewhere else. I'm not going to help you with that. I've never done it myself because I don't believe in it. It's unhealthy to be starving yourself just purely for the aesthetics. But when we focus on your capability, on you being fit and you want being healthy and building strength, that subsequent benefit is the improvement in your aesthetics. It comes as a byproduct. It's so important because, like you said, it's one of like my personal goals is when I'm 85, I still want to be able to run around with my great grandkids. But like you said, someone could be fit, like an ultra marathon runner. Think
Yeah.
David Goggins, incredibly fit.
Yeah.
But healthy, you'll be the first one to tell you. You listen to his books. He's not healthy, but he's incredibly fit, and there is that difference, definitely. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You mentioned at the beginning part then how essentially, yes, you can input your information to ChatGPT and it'll give you generic advice based on the average person. But let's talk specifically about a daily calorie goal and the BMR and the TDEE. For example, I recently found out through my DNA tests with yourselves that I've got a faster metabolism, and I think I need like between 15 and 25% more calories, which would explain why for my entire life, I could go on holiday with my brother-in-law, we'd eat the same, he'd put on 12 pounds, I wouldn't put on anything, or why I've always struggled to gain weight. But as if I was to rely on the generic calorie calculators, it might say that I need 2,800 calories a day to maintain weight, when in reality, I probably need 3,400
Of
calories.
course. Yeah.
And it's something I've been explaining to my current clients now when I'm telling them about the importance. I'll say, look, I've got an iPhone. Have you got an iPhone? Yeah, I got an iPhone. Okay, great. Put in my passcode because we both got iPhones. Surely my passcode should work on your phone. And they're like, no, but this is my phone.
Of course. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Works my body isn't by default going to work body. Yes,
Completely.
we've got, like I said, at the beginning, we've got the same DNA essentially, or the same bodies, but it's bespoke, it's specific to you. So that's why guys should care about them. What are the most common what are the most common highlights or factors that you see through men having their DNA tested that could have an impact on their ability to build strength and health? So like, for example, for me, it was one of them was selenium. And now me, simple, Brazil nuts. Get some Brazil nuts to give you selenium. What are the most common factors that you see which could be holding guys back from making progress?
So there's a couple really. For the first one that I would probably say is that inflammatory markers. I think when people are training, they often, whether they're a beginner, moderate, or advanced, I think when you're advanced, you probably know your body slightly more detail. But the thing that I see is that a lot of people that train, and specifically trying to train to a certain goal, they overtrain. And they don't realize that they're overtraining. They want to get to a target, or they've got something in mind that they're training for, and they think that by doing more, they'll get there quicker. And sometimes, specifically with training, when you've got certain inflammatory markers, less is more. And I understand this for myself as well. When I used to train, when I did powerlifting and bodybuilding years ago, when you're younger, you think, oh, I'm going to go to the gym every day, or maybe train twice a day, and I'm going to get to that specific point that I want to get to much faster. And then I figured out, well, I didn't figure out, I was ill for a fortnight or so. And I actually came back to the gym and I looked a lot better than I did. And the guys are saying, James, it's really weird. The less you train, the better you look. And I thought, the less I train, the better I look. Right. Okay. So I started training less, a bit like the old Dorian Yates way of training, a little bit, I guess. More intensity and less volume for me. So I'd go to the gym 3 times a week as opposed to 5. And I found that my progress was going through the roof quite quickly. And then subsequently later on, I find that I've got quite a heightened inflammatory response. So if I train all the time and I'm inflamed all the time, I never give my body a chance. I guess it's like watering a plant. You never give it enough time to nourish it and let it grow. And I was doing breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down, and never giving a chance to actually thrive. So I think they're one of the areas that a lot of people can look at. And we all know when I used to train lots of people years ago, there'd always be that one mum in the gym that she'd do back-to-back classes, then she'd go for a run, then she'd go and have a PT session, and she'd still be about, I don't know, carrying an extra couple of stone heavier than she should be. And she's like, I've tried everything. I'm training a million times a week. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like, train less. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if you do less, sometimes the body thrives on doing less. It can recover, regenerate, feels a lot healthier, and you'll find that you'll get down the pathway a lot quicker than what you thought. And again, like I said before, it does sound counterintuitive. Do less to get more, but the recovery side of things, and I think this is coming into it a lot more now, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're getting enough decent food. And you don't have to do ice baths and hot cold therapies and saunas and all the other things. Obviously, they do help, but just be mindful around your training. And as I said before, the inflammatory markers is one area. So if you've got heightened inflammation, that'll be one area. If you're not getting where you think you need to get to, then you might be constantly inflamed. And you can look at blood markers as well. But if you're genetically predisposed to having heightened inflammation, then work with it. Don't fuel it even more by training even more and at a higher intensity. You might need to just sit back and relax a little bit. Another area that we mentioned when we spoke, and I always gravitate towards this one, is look at your vitamin and mineral deficiency risks, because they are upstream of lots of things that might be downstream. And one example of that might be if you're genetically not very good at absorbing and metabolizing magnesium, you might find that you're not sleeping well. You've got massive amounts of stress. You're getting muscle cramps all the time. And obviously all of those are tied into magnesium. So if you take care of the top part, you'll find that the rest might filter down and you might start sleeping better. Your recovery might be better, less muscle cramps. So the knock-on effect of just adjusting one specific area might have an effect on, I don't know, 4, 5, 10 different areas. So always gravitas towards that area first, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and then have a look at the other things after that.
That's a really good point and a really good example with that magnesium. Because like you said, it's when someone wants to recover, make more progress, yeah, they'll look at, well, first of all, they'll probably look at other things, red light therapy, taking a cold shower. And then I'm like, no, the crocodile closest to the boat, sleep.
Yeah.
Make sure you're sleeping right. But like you said, there is that further upstream of, well, if your magnesium is sufficient and your body's utilizing it and your body is metabolizing it, then you're going to sleep better and you're going to have less stress. And because you're having less stress and sleeping better, you're going to recover better. You're going to make more progress.
Yeah.
I literally made a reel about it this morning about shooting the crocodile closest to the boat, in the sense that I see a lot of guys who will be taking TRT, doing red light therapy, doing cold baths, shockwave therapy, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, have you tried eating a decent diet and then sleeping? Like, I know so many guys who look, my testosterone's low, so I'm getting on TRT. I'm like, yeah, but you've never eaten properly in the years that I've known you. You do not exercise, and you tell me you sleep 4 hours a night. So
there you go.
So look at them first of all, you might
Yeah.
get a few more natural benefits. So really good points there. So, okay, something you mentioned with the information as well is something I see within myself. I might hit a bit of a plateau in the gym, then we'll go on holiday for a week, or I'll take a few days off for whatever reason, and I'll come back to the gym and I'll be like, where did this strength come from? I like feel just so good. So now is probably a good time, James, if we was to dive into, I guess, the key areas of my results.
Of course, yeah.
The guys listening, because I want them to remember that 16 years I've been doing this. 16 years I've been coaching guys with the generic approach that James and I have spoken about earlier, whereas now we're switching to this DNA optimized approach. For 16 years I've been doing that, but I've always wondered why I could get in good shape, but not great shape. But then sometimes I could get clients in better shape than I could get myself in, and I'd be scratching my head thinking, what's going on? So, James, it'd be great if you could just give me a bit of a highlight on my results and what they mean.
What specific areas would you like to touch on?
I think anything that, so the most important things to me are longevity and sort of my longer term health. But I think for the guys who will be listening to the show, the crocodile closest to their boats or their first priorities would be optimizing their strength and their immediate health, sleeping better, getting more progress in the gym, building muscle a little bit quicker, and making sure they're eating the right foods. So anything which correlates to that, if you can do that.
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the areas for you, and this I wouldn't say it's a buzzword because it dilutes it slightly, is mental health. Because if you're stressed, you're not sleeping well, you've got heightened anxiety, you're on that fight or flight mode all the time, then it doesn't, to a certain degree, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter what you're doing, but it affects you massively. If you're mentally stressed and you can't alleviate it, it obviously affects and impacts every area of your life. And with yours, you have, was it comped your warrior? Were you the warrior with an O?
Yeah.
You're the same as me. So this is one area that's absolutely huge, that if you can get to grips with it, and I think when people see their results for this, I think it's quite reassuring and quite relaxing to some degree, because when you see that you're hardwired to being like this, you stop beating yourself up. Because a lot of people are, oh, well, I'm always stressed. Why do I always overthink this? Why do I always beat myself up? And then you go, genetically, that's what I'm meant to be like. So it's a little bit, you're like, I think it allows you to just take a big, deep breath out. You're like, okay, that makes sense now. And there's certain things that you might be doing to pour petrol on that fire every day. For myself, when I used to play rugby, I used to get really bad pre-match nerves. And I used to only get them when I was 16, 17. And it moved from being just a bit of a laugh at the weekend to now you're getting paid and you're on TV and you start. And I used to feel really nauseous the night before, throwing up in the changing room, throwing up on the pitch. Whistle went, perfectly fine. But I now know that all the things that they were doing back in the back in the 90s, lots of caffeine, lots of this, lots of that, that was the worst thing for me, because
Yeah.
genetically I'm comped warrior with an O, so I overthink things. I have too much adrenaline. So the best thing for me to do, and it's probably not a done thing in most changing rooms, is have a cup of tea. Because I was having lots of caffeine, which increases certain stress hormones, which is the worst thing for me to do. I was having lots of Lucozade, obviously, just pure sugar. Again, the worst thing for me to do. If I'd gone, okay, I know this now, the night before, I'm going to have a magnesium bath. So I'm going to put lots of magnesium bath flakes in there and just relax. I'm not going to have any caffeine, lots of sugar. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. Then I'm not saying that I wouldn't have had any nerves at all, but I think it would have reduced it slightly. So I would have felt better in myself. Now, if you can apply that to your everyday life, maybe you've got a stressful meeting, you've got to present something on Monday, or you've got to do something on Wednesday that you're getting anxious about, that you may be public speaking, or you've got to do something, and you know that you're a comped warrior variant, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do this, and this, and I'm going to put this in place, and it should just bring down my anxiety levels massively. So I don't know how you've managed when you saw your result for warrior, did you think, yeah, that makes complete sense now?
I was so relieved because literally back in 2020, I had a complete mental breakdown. I was medicated for anxiety. I had to take time off work because I was chasing this. And again, I've been open about this over social media previously, so it's nothing new for people. I was chasing this big entrepreneurial dream. I wanted to run a tech startup. I wanted a Porsche yacht. Trust me, Porsche make yachts. I was looking at them and everything. And like, I was staking all my happiness on the future. And I ended up having a complete breakdown and I just couldn't handle the self-inflicted stress and anxiety. And I will say it was self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And even still now, I'm very sensitive to it. Literally only about, say, 6 weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago, before I had the test done, I started to pick up on the correlation of if I have more than 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day, I felt really anxious, especially in my chest. I could feel it. And even like day to day, like with the kids, and again, I can't say if I wasn't managing it because I didn't know that I had to manage it. But I always had that correlation of, I know when I spend more time journaling in the evenings, I'm usually a happier person.
Okay.
If I can try and find just 10 minutes just to close my eyes and breathe, I'm a happier person. But I didn't understand why. I was just like, oh, maybe I'm just a really stressed, anxious person. Like even a few weeks ago, I was sort of putting a bit too much effort on trying to grow the coaching business. And I was just like anxious and snappy and stressed all the time. So when I received the result, it was exactly like you've just said. it was like a relief. I said, this makes sense now. And so, and again, from that first chat that we have, it's stuff I've been doing, and I now put out more time for just breathing and meditating. I've got the magnesium bath flakes for the bath and everything. I've got ashwagandha as well. As you mentioned, taking ashwagandha in the mornings and the evenings, because I am very sensitive to it. And I started to think of other things. Like, again, if, say, for example, you was to send me a shitty message just before I went to bed.
Yeah.
That's it. Like,
Yeah.
actually, I'm a great sleeper. Like, I'll put on a sleep story and I'll be gone within 2 minutes of it. But if you was to send me a shitty text,
Of course. Yeah.
a night's ruined. Do you know what I mean? And I never knew why. I just knew that was the case. I just thought, oh, maybe I just can't handle the pressures of the world. And you start beating yourself up about it then. You're like, oh, I want to be resilient, but I can't handle this.
Yeah.
Blaming myself. So it was a relief to find out why, and then to understand how it can be managed as well.
Okay. And in relation to your, I couldn't remember your vitamin and mineral deficiencies. You had selenium was one. Did you have, it was omega-3s another one? I can't remember.
Yeah, omega-3s, selenium, MTHFR mutation for the B
Oh,
vitamin.
that was it. Do you want me to touch on that? Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of, okay, so I think there's a chap that a lot of people have heard of, specifically in the longevity space, called Gary Brecker.
Yeah.
So he's mentioned a gene called MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, to give it its full name. Bit of a mouthful. Now, what this gene does is, and this is applicable to everybody listening, there's a process in the body called the methylation cycle, and it does lots of different things. The two main things is you need to recycle or reduce, there's an amino acid called homocysteine, and we need to recycle it and turn it back into methionine, which is a protein-dependent amino acid. So that's why having a good, healthy amount of protein in your diet each day is fundamentally important for the methylation cycle and longevity. We can get into another argument about having high levels of protein and mTOR and aging and various other things, but specifically for this one reference point, having a decent amount of protein helps this methylation cycle. Now, why is this important? We need to reduce homocysteine, because homocysteine, if we get elevated levels or too high levels, and some people are predisposed to this, it's quite a bad biomarker for cardiac issues, as well as dementia and cognitive decline. So that's one area that we need to get to grips with in the methylation cycle. The second area, as I mentioned with my fantastic Blue Peter model,
I do love that.
was the methyl groups. So it makes methyl groups. Okay. Now, MTHFR that Gary's referenced is a gene that basically takes inactive folate and creates it into the active version. The problem that we've got is that the government have done lots of things that are going to kill us, but the one specific thing is that they've put, and this is off old science, and I explain this, they've put folic acid in everything. Bread, it's fortified in vitamins, pasta, they've put it in everything. And the reason for that was to stop birth defects, because if women are deficient in folic acid, neurotube defects, okay. So this is based in science.
It was always, okay, now you're pregnant, you got to start taking folic acid. That
Exactly.
Was 12.
Yeah. So the problem that we've got with that is that this was based on science back in the late 80s, and they started popping it in food in the early 90s. But we hadn't mapped the genome then. So we mapped the full genome in 2003. Then nutrigenetics comes along and says, oh, hang on a minute. There's 40% of you out there that have got this one, we'll just call it a gene enzyme, that doesn't metabolize folic acid very well. So in fact, it becomes a little bit toxic, and it blocks the more beneficial folate that you're getting from your green vegetables. So the problem that we've got is that if you've got a hampered, as you have, a slightly hampered MTHFR, and for simplicity, let's say you've got a gene that works at, I don't know, 100%, 50%, 25%. You've got one that works at 50%. Some people have got some that works at 25%, so they're going to have real issues. So if you're consuming folic acid and you've got a crappy variant of MTHFR, the first part or the first hurdle in this methylation cycle, you're going to fall flat on your face. So, and there's different genes. You've got MTR, MTRR, there's various nutrients. So B vitamins are very, very important. So we need to make sure we're getting enough B vitamins. Another really, really important nutrient that everyone listening will have heard of is creatine.
Uh-huh.
Now, creatine, we all know creatine, go to the gym, take creatine, ATP, improve strength, blah, 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 all the sports supplementation research that's been done. But the more, and I hate using this word, nuanced, I hate we're using that word, but it's quite applicable to this. Creatine in the methylation cycle, around 60 to 80% of this whole cycle is used to make creatine and phosphatidylcholine.
Okay.
So if we give the body external creatine, the body goes, frees up, and it can do other wonderful things in the body, maybe improving stress hormones, maybe improving cellular health, maybe what detoxification. So if you're giving the body external choline and creatine, you've freed up a lot of the methylation cycle. But we
Right.
do explain certain points within the report: B12, choline, folate, B6, B2. There's a whole variety of vitamins and minerals that you require to keep this running smoothly. So Gary Brecker has notified everyone, MTHFR, but there are other genes involved. It's a bit like looking at your car and saying, yeah, the engine's a bit crap. Yeah, but what are the brakes, the steering? You've got a whole array of different things that you need to look at.
Yeah. Right. That makes perfect sense. And I guess that brings me back to that other area where Muhdo does good work is for those more common issues, you can also provide the supplementation as well, can't you? Like you've got timeless longevity supplement, but specifically for me with that B vitamin and the MTHFR mutation, I
Yep.
needed a methylated form of vitamin B, which I can get from you guys as well. So give us a little talk about what you guys then offer outside of the DNA testing as well.
Yeah, so in relation to, you just touched on the supplements. Years ago, we thought, right, do we bring some supplements out? And this is the problem that we had, is that if I said to you, okay, here's your report, mate, and you need to buy this, you're going to be like, hang on a minute, you've given me those results to sell me a supplement. So we thought, right, we're not doing supplements because it's going to look like we're just trying to flog everyone's supplements. So we just didn't do it. Then after 7 years of getting emails from customers going, okay, so you've told me that I need to take B vitamins, vitamin D, whatever it may be. Where do I buy them? Which one should I take? Okay. Well, the trouble is with two parts there is that firstly, I don't know where to send you, really, or Amazon or Holland and Barrett, but then secondly, I don't know what's in these things because if you, a lot of supplements, it's a bit like the Wild West, unfortunately. A lot of supplements say they've got X number in there or this specific vitamin or whatever it may be, but it's not actually in there. When you actually test them, it's just full of crap. So either the specific nutrient they're using is quite a poor version, so they're using folic acid instead of methylfolate, they're using cyanocobalamin B12 instead of methylcobalamin or adenosylcobalamin, and people on the face of it see B12 and they think, okay, B12 is B12, and there's lots of different types.
Yeah, but
So
you
it's the
think that's what I
quality
need.
and the quantity. So they might give you, I don't know, quite a bad. And this is the problem that you've got in the UK as well, is that from a legality point of view, RDAs are, they need to be redone because they were formulated centuries ago, a long time ago.
For guys who don't know, that's the recommended
Daily,
daily
daily allowed. Yeah. So
vitamins, all that.
it's to be fair, if you had an RDA of something, it's basically giving you enough of that specific nutrient to lie in bed and not blink, really. I mean, if you're an active person, you go into the gym, you've got an active life, you've got kids, I mean, you're going to be burning through these things at an elevated rate. So having an RDA of something, look, it's better than having nothing, but it's not really going to, you're not going to thrive on it. We want to be optimum with things, not just barely creeping in. So that's why after basically 5 years of genetic and epigenetic research, we found all the key vitamin and mineral deficiency risks that the majority of people, we've tested over 80,000 people now, so that our data bank in relation to what are the most common deficiencies, vitamin D, magnesium. So we thought, do you know what? We're going to design some really good supplements that actually have got decent amounts in and actually got decent quality ingredients in. Amazing, groundbreaking. And we're not going to take the piss with the price like most people do as well.
Yeah.
So we developed all these different nutrients. Timeless was basically born out of looking at all the epigenetic research and data we've got and correlating it and the causation, because without getting too technical, we can see specifically in our basically our research platform how a specific nutrient has an effect on a specific reference point within the genome, magnifying it, suppressing it. So we've included lots of vitamins and minerals and specific things in there like SAMe, which you probably haven't heard of, a lot of people may not have heard of. It's basically a key component within the methylation cycle. Ecidinyl methylate. So it's basically within the methylation cycle. There's key points as I touched on. Basically, SAMe is a critical part. It's the body's key methyl donor. So it basically goes around dishing out methyl groups and letting the body get on with. So if you provide the body with SAMe, then it frees up that area as well. So
Okay.
there's different areas within there. But if we look at the specific supplements, magnesium, B vitamins, selenium, and vitamin D, then they're all crucial that most people are going to need to take, I would think, at some point within their life, unless their diet is completely on point. But again, that comes back to the point that most food groups and even the vegetables that we buy in the supermarket are minerally deficient to some degree because the soil has been depleted over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. What the soil used to contain 50 years ago is completely different to how the soil is now.
Yes. And that's so going specifically then into timeless. So is that what timeless addresses? I guess, like you said, you've got that data pool within the research. Does timeless address those most common deficiencies?
Yeah, so timeless, it's hard to describe it really. It's like a genetic multivitamin plus 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 plus. So it addresses the methylation cycle that we briefly touched on, but then if you improve the methylation cycle and improve the production of methyl groups, then your DNA methylation and your biological age and the regulation of gene expression should be improved. So it's like a downstream effect. Another area is, have you heard of glutathione?
Yes.
So glutathione is like it's like the mother of all antioxidants. It's extremely important within the body, but there are various things, various nutrients that you need to take to improve the production of glutathione. Lots of companies sell glutathione supplements, but it's a very, very delicate molecule. So by taking it in a capsule form, in many ways, the stomach just breaks it down and just gets rid of it. So you'd be better off giving the body all the blocks or necessary cofactors it needs to make it itself. And that's another basically up point of timers as well.
And that's a good point you mentioned there about, like you said, you can take something, but is it really the best way of taking it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, completely.
Look at any like digestive supplements which have the sort of 20 billion bacteria in them. They'll often say on the back, don't take this with a hot liquid because you're just going to kill the bacteria before it gets into your small intestines and
Of
stuff.
course. Yeah.
But one thing you mentioned is really important, I think, is, like you said, you can look at the back of a label and they'll say it's got B vitamins, but do you really know what's in there and what kind of form and everything? I bought a relatively cheap protein powder the other day because it ran out. I'm sure it's just Nesquik. Like I
Sure.
made like it's like nothing up. It just tastes like a Nesquik. But I don't really know what's in it because I know there's also the whole con, if you want to call it, of amino spiking to the
Of
sense where
course.
protein powders, you can't really test the protein. You can only test for that certain amino acid sort of within the powder. So you could just spike that amino and not have the protein content, which then brings us on to the sports supplement companies say they all do it. My Protein, Bulk, Protein Works, etc., where they have their then informed sports range. Like, oh yeah, but this range we've tested, so we know what's in it. And you're like, well, what about the other ones I've been buying for 10 years then? Do
Of
we not
course. Of
know
course.
what's in those?
Yeah, it's a bit of a, I mean, supplement industry. Luckily, we work with a lady that you probably have heard of, MSC Nutrition down in
Yeah.
Cardiff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we've been working with Nikki for a long time, and she helps create all the supplements. So Nikki is diligent, I would say. She's one of the most diligent people I've ever worked with in relation to making sure we get each ingredient the best that we can. We don't cut corners. And you probably saw in the paper, was it last week that 20 leading protein companies have got high levels of lead in their protein supplements? I don't know who it was. Was it Huel that had massive amounts of lead? I mean, look, every food group that we get to a certain degree has got trace amounts of lots of things in there, whether it be arsenic, lead. Having trace amounts and high levels are completely two different things. And it's strange, really, because I'm not an expert in the manufacturing process, but when you're making supplements, they're meant to go through certain testing or metal detecting machines to make sure there aren't any high levels. You don't want high levels of lead in
No,
anything that you're eating. I
thanks.
would suggest, maybe I'm just being picky, but I don't see It's a bit strange that you've got these multi-million pound companies that are, maybe that's why they're multi-million pound companies, because they're just cutting corners. I don't know. Is that libelous? Maybe. I don't know.
I wouldn't disagree because I've seen it with like companies like My Protein, Bulk, the Protein Works, because we've been in the industry so long, started using them when they were relatively new. Then over years, the quality just deteriorates massively.
Yeah.
You know, when you look through reviews, like you'll have one product and then they'll change their branding and give you another product. You're like, this is nothing like what it was before. This tastes so like full of just additives and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, there is. Yeah, like I said, you're never going to know what's going on. But when then those kind of reports come out, it does raise the question, doesn't it? Of actually,
Completely.
what can we trust, kind of thing. And
Yeah. It's
you,
sad, really.
yeah, these big brands who bring on the big influencers, you'd hope you could trust them, but yeah,
Yeah. It does need, I mean, it is regulated. People seem to think that it isn't regulated, but I think it does need tightening up a little bit, to be fair.
yeah, no, that does make sense. So, okay, we've gone through a lot. Considering the listener, then, James, average man, say he's 38 years old, he's got a couple of kids, he's been training for a couple of years, doesn't really feel quite himself like he used to, foggy, he's a bit tired, he's not really making much progress in the gym, never really done anything outside of following a generic training program and trying to cut out junk, less alcohol, eat a bit more protein. What would you recommend he does if he really wants to optimize his body for both performance now
Hmm.
and strength gains, etc. now, but also then a greater health span, greater longevity?
Okay. So for me, again, it's quite simplistic as well. Firstly, don't try and do everything all at the same time.
Love that.
So little goals, maybe work on something for a fortnight, or give yourself a realistic time frame for it to be then part of your lifestyle. Because if you can't, I wouldn't say easily do it, but if you can't adopt that every day within your week, then you're going to fall off the wagon at some point. So maybe just say, do you know what? I just don't sleep very well, or I'm up late night watching TV, or whatever it may be. Maybe say, okay, now I'm going to get to bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and that's the goal. You're probably going to lie there and stare at the ceiling for the best part of a week, maybe 2 weeks, until your body starts adjusting to it. But remember, you can't do quick fixes. If you've been chronically bad at sleeping, then it's going to take you a number of days, maybe a week, maybe a month for your body to adjust to, okay, now I'm going to bed at 10 and I'm getting up at this time. It's going to take a while for you to adjust. So don't beat yourself up if you can't flick on and change it like that, because nothing works instantly. And specifically, you can probably change it when you're younger, but as you get older, you're set in your ways, aren't you? You've got kids, you've got a business to run, you've got this to do. So in many instances, you're the last thing to get changed. You've got to make sure that all these other things are done before we can adjust you. But sometimes if you flip it on its head and you adjust you, then everything else in your life, well, not everything, but other things in your life might slip into place or feel a little bit easier. So I don't like to use the word be a bit selfish, but if you can just tweak a few things, give yourself a realistic time frame, don't beat yourself up if they don't happen straight away, and maybe and again, another analogy, the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Pick things that you think that you'll be able to tweak quite quickly or easily straight away. Because if you tweak that, it becomes part of your lifestyle. You see some improvement, you feel better for it, then you go on to the next thing. It becomes a little bit easier, as opposed to saying, right, tomorrow I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go 4 times a week, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's just not realistic. I think setting realistic time frames and targets for yourself, I think, is probably the main one.
Yeah, and taking that sustainable approach. But like you said, you don't want to say be a little selfish, but you can say just don't be as selfless.
Yeah.
Something I say, especially about dads, is like I'll do in the evenings. I'll cook my dinner. I'll cook another two dinners because our daughter is different to our son and my wife, and do their dinners, and I'll give them the dinner. Then I'm getting drinks, and by the time I get to my dinner, it's cold. I
Of
don't
course.
mind eat cold dinner. It's just we do as dads. We always put everyone else first. But what you've said about the goals is so important. It's like when I work with a new client and they've tried things before and always fallen off the wagon, we identify it's because they tried too much, too hard, too quick. So, okay, well, we're not going to change your complete meal plan now, but what I want you to do is start just every day. First of all, optimize your breakfast. Don't worry about your lunch and your dinner yet. Let's start just optimizing your breakfast. Let's get that meal sorted first, and then we'll look at other things. Same with the gym. No point starting 5 days a week. Let's start you just twice a week till you build up the habit. Let's see what time you've got available. Then we'll build from there. So that is a really, really good point. And for those of you who are listening, and for those of you who have been a little inspired or a little intrigued by what we've been discussing today as well, I'm working with Muhdo Hub, and I will be integrating the DNA testing approach into my coaching as well, following everything that I'm doing with James and Muhdo Hub and everything that they do with the AI reporting. So James, is there anything that you'd like to say or advise the guys on before we end today's episode?
The main thing for me is that we've unfortunately got, it's a benefit and a curse at the same time. At no point in history have we had so much information at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And again, it comes to that point of paralysis by overanalysis. Sometimes, right, Dave said to do that, John said to do that. That's working for that person. I'll Google that. Oh, that's doing that diet's doing carnivore or vegan, or it's really. I can understand people are just so confused knowing what works best for them. The DNA side of things provides you with a really nice foundation to work off that you will have for the rest of your life. Because like I said before, your DNA doesn't change. What you've got is what you've got. If you've got increased risks or areas of, I don't like to use the word concern, or areas that, let's say weak points that you probably might need to be mindful of, you're always going to have them. So just be mindful of them, because you can put things in place to mitigate for their effects completely in most instances. So I would say the best thing about a DNA test, and I wish I had had this 25, 30 years ago when I started training, you're going to know about yourself and you're going to have these little bits of snippets and information for the rest of your life. And certain things might come in and come out. Like we spoke about, or I've spoken about heart disease and other diabetes. Just because you have gene variants that predispose you to having X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean you're going to go down that pathway. It doesn't. If you've got a family history of heart disease or whatever it may be, your granddad had a heart attack, your dad had a heart attack, and you've got genes around that area. Well, if you don't live your life how your relatives have, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you have a better diet, you're not going to, I don't know, flick those genes on. Because remember, your DNA, again, it's another analogy. Your DNA loads the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So it's just knowing all these data points, really.
No, that I do love that. James, thank you very much for joining me on the Strong Dad Show. Gentlemen, I will be linking below everything to Muhdo Hub, all of their testing kits, and where you can find out more information. If you've got any specific questions at all, please just let me know and I'll fire them over to the Muhdo team and we can provide answers to those. But James, thank you very much for joining the Strong Dad Show, sir. And gentlemen, we'll catch you in the next one.